It's September 2025 and I'm in the hometown of one of the giants of German industry that's never cheated on its emissions testing. Located close to the old border between West and East Germany, the city of Wolfsburg is the 5th largest in Lower Saxony and the 64th largest in the country, and is most famous for being the hometown of Volkswagen. The Rothehof Burg is a small medieval tower hill castle built sometime in the 1200s that's located in the Wolfsburg city forest to the south of the city centre. Built as a fortified residence for a knight and his family, it was first documented in 1304, but by the 15th century it had fallen into disrepair. Its age puts it around 100 years older than Schloss Wolfsburg, located to the north of the city centre, which is where the city now takes its name from. But let's start by ripping the plaster off and deal with that rather right-wing elephant in the room. The city took the name Wolfsburg on the 25th of May 1945, after the surviving castle at a time when it was occupied by American forces. The city that is today Wolfsburg was founded on the 1st of July 1938, which puts it at a difficult time in German history, especially when you name the city City of the Strength Through Joy Car at Vorlersleben, or Stadt der Car der Erfahrens bei Fahrersleben. In 1934, Adolf Hitler ordered the production of a basic vehicle capable of transporting 2 adults and 3 children at 100 kilometers an hour. He wanted a car that every German family would be able to afford, with a price point of 990 Reichsmark. It soon became clear that private companies couldn't turn out a car at that price, so Hitler chose to set up a new state-owned factory using the skills of Ferdinand Porsche to design the car that would eventually become the Beetle. The idea was that families could buy the car through a savings scheme, setting 5 marks a week aside to pay for the car. Around 336,000 people took up the offer, which wasn't commercially viable, and only with Nazi government support did the scheme stay afloat, until the outbreak of war in 1939, which did for the scheme. None of the original savers ever received a car. To help with the production of the car, a new state-of-the-art works was built close to the village of Vorlersleben, and around the works a planned town was constructed to house the workers of the People's Car, or Volkswagen, factory. Of course, if you then, barely a year later, declare war on most of the rest of Europe, that's going to bring a halt to production as the factory pivoted away to serve the war industry, and of course, this being the Nazi regime, mostly through the use of forced workers and prisoners of war. In 1942, the Nazi authorities established the Arbeitsdorf concentration camp in the city. The camp was set up as a work camp, and officially only 6 prisoners died during the 6 months the camp was in operation, but Nazi Germany. The city and factory were captured on the 11th of April 1945 by US troops, and around 7,700 forced labourers were liberated from the Volkswagen factory. A fortnight later, the city was renamed to Wolfsburg after the nearby castle. The Americans moved out in June 1945 when Lower Saxony became part of the British occupation zone. After the British took control, there were originally plans to ship the salvageable equipment in the factory back to the UK as war reparations, but the decision was taken to build the factory back up, in part to help alleviate a refugee crisis in the city. By 1946, the factory was producing 1,000 cars a month, even with unrepaired damage to the roof and windows. The British looked to offload the factory to an established manufacturer, but representatives from the American, Australian, French and British motor industries all rejected it. That turned out to be the forerunner of blockbusters turning down the opportunity to buy Netflix, as a newly rejuvenated Volkswagen became an important element, both symbolically and economically, of a West German regeneration and then the German economic miracle in the 1950s and 60s. In effect, the city of Wolfsburg is a post-war construction, and the Stadtmuseum, housed in the grounds of Schloss Wolfsburg, does a good job in building a collection out of less than 80 years of history. The city, little of which other than dormitories for the workers had been built before the war, was constructed post-war, with a city hall opening in 1958. In 1972, 20 localities were added to the city through the Wolfsburg Act, with Wolfsburg gaining the status of a major city, growing to 204 square kilometres and over 130,000 inhabitants. In 1988, the city became a university town with the establishment of what is today the Ostfalia University of Applied Science. Where most city museums would have a model of a city in the medieval or perhaps its Renaissance grandeur, Wolfsburg goes with the immediate post-war rebuild based around the mega factory north of the canal and the city to the south. The museum, which was founded in 1951, houses a number of artefacts relating to life in the city during the 1950s and 60s as it grew, as well as the story of its football team, VfL Wolfsburg, who went all the way to win the Bundesliga in 2009. In addition, there are a small number of items that date to the prehistory of the Wolfsburg area and on the Schloss Wolfsburg. On the upper floors, the museum houses the documentation on the victims of National Socialist tyranny, which looks at the use of forced labour at the VW factory. The museum is located in the former carriage house of the Wolfsburg Castle, the main building of which has been under the control of the City Council since 1961. This includes the extensive gardens, which are now a public park that's free to explore. Originally built as a tower house on the River Arla, it was expanded over time until it reached its current form in the 17th century. The earliest record of the castle is from 1302, where it's referred to as Wielersburg and in the ownership of the von Bartelslebens. During the Middle Ages, the castle consisted of just a tower and an attached building called the Old House, with no enclosures or defensive walls. By 1437 that had changed as the site was equipped with 10 cannon, and these were required as the von Bartelslebens were involved in a feud against Duke Otto of Lüneburg. The castle survived the 30 Years' War as one of the few aristocratic castles that wasn't destroyed, having been almost continuously garrisoned by troops of the various warring parties, the last being the Swedes, who were forced out by the lords of Brunswick and Magdeburg in 1650 by having the fortifications slighted. 6 years later, with the castle back under the control of the von Bartelslebens, they had the fortifications rebuilt, this time just for aesthetic purposes to retain the original character of the castle. The von Bartelsleben line died out in 1742, at which point the castle was inherited by the Counts of Schulenburg. The Counts sold the castle to the city in 1943, but in 1947 the city sold it on to the state of Lower Saxony as it lacked the funds to maintain the structure. The palace had multiple roles as housing for disabled, a youth home, a youth training location, and as a refugee hostel. In 1961, the city brought the castle back from the state and carried out renovations, turning the building into a cultural hub, with it today housing a number of galleries and artists' studios. The 26-hectare landscape park to the east of the palace was created in the 19th century and is today a major city park with numerous paths through the trees and planting, as well as a series of sculptures dotted around the grounds. A much earlier creation was the Baroque garden, which was first laid out at the start of the 18th century as part of the transformation of the Wolfsburg Castle into the Wolfsburg Palace. Because Wolfsburg is such a young city with little in the area before its creation, there aren't the large number of historic sites to see in the city as you would find in an older German city, but there are still a number of locations to visit, including the Große Schillerteich, a large lake on the Hasselbach River that is surrounded by parkland. At 400 metres long and 250 metres wide, the lake is the largest and lowest of a series of lakes on the Hasselbach River, shortly before it disappears underground to be piped underneath the Mittellandkanal that runs between the city centre and the VW factory, and then empties into its traditional outflow of the Aller River. A mill was located on the north bank of the lake from around 1600, but it was demolished in 1971. Near the western shore of the lake is an artificial island covered with trees. Close to the lake are the distinctive bell towers of two of the city's churches. The Catholic St. Christophorus, the oldest and largest Catholic church in the city, was built between 1950 and 1951. The church is named after St. Christopher, the patron saint of travellers, including motorists, deliberately chosen for the connection to Volkswagen. The Lutheran Christuskirche, or Christ Church, also opened in the same year, similarly having a distinctive bell tower. To help the church stand out a bit more, it was built on an artificially created hill on the banks of the Schillerteich. One of the major attractions of the city is the Kunstmuseum Wolfsburg, or the Wolfsburg Art Museum, located in the heart of the city centre, which opened in 1994 to display modern and contemporary art and is supported, naturally, by the Volkswagen Art Foundation. The Mittellandkanal, at 325.3 kilometres long, is the longest artificial waterway in Germany, connecting the Dortmund-Elms Canal with the Weser, Elbe and the Elbe-Havel Canal, running through the centre of the country, in effect linking the Rhine to the Oder. It also forms a dividing line in the city, with the VW works and other industries sitting to the north of the canal and the living city to the south. One of the major crossings over the canal for pedestrians is the Stadtbrücke, which links the city centre with perhaps the largest attraction in the city, AutoStadt. The views from the bridge are some of the best of the Volkswagen works, with the iconic four chimneys of the VW power plant, with its giant blue and white VW logo, the default image whenever the news talks about German industry. Or emissions testing scandals. The first ideas for AutoStadt were put together in the early 1990s, with work starting on the site of a former fuel company bordering the Volkswagen plant in 1998. The main pavilion of the complex opened in May 2000, providing an exhibition space to present famous cars for the Volkswagen historical collection that had previously been locked away in crates, with some being displayed to the public for the first time. Taking the escalator up the full height of the building, you reach the top floor of the pavilion and the Icons exhibition, which draws on not just VW's history, but the history of design to showcase iconic designs from the VW Beetle and Campervan through to Pac-Man and the Rubik's Cube, via the Angle Boys lamp and the Eames lounge chair. There's even a cutaway of the Beetle to show you the simplicity of the world's most produced car. A floor below, there's an exhibition on the role of sustainability and green initiatives in vehicle production, which, surprisingly, totally fails to mention anything about car manufacturers rigging their test data to make their diesel cars look less polluting than they truly are. The site is both a museum and a showroom, with each of the different VW companies having a display pavilion in the grounds where you can go and view the cars and, if you've got the cash to splash, put together and purchase your perfect spec of any of VW's vehicles, from Skoda, Seat and VW to Audi, Porsche and Lamborghini, Bugatti and Bentley. You can also see, and if you book really early, visit the AutoStadt, two giant towers that house up to 800 new cars ready for their new owners to come and collect. Obviously, if you've just splashed around €40,000 on a brand new Golf, you get free entrance into AutoStadt and even a trip up the tower and a meal in the restaurant chucked in for free. But the main attraction of the site is the Zeithaus, the large museum of automotive history that occupies a prime spot behind the main pavilion and facing the VW plant. The museum is home to over 250 vehicles from around 60 brands from a variety of manufacturers, not all part of the VW group. This includes vehicles that are important historically for their role in developing the car industry and changes in the vehicles that people drive, even if that does include some vehicles that look pretty mundane, such as early minivans that all but killed the estate car in Europe in the 1990s. Amongst the collection are also the oldest surviving Beetle and the very last original Beetle that rolled off its Mexican production line on the 30th of July 2003. Vehicle number 21,529,464 brought to an end 65 years of production, the longest production run and most produced of any single generation of automobile. And naturally, it wouldn't be a museum in the home city of Volkswagen without an exhibition on perhaps its most iconic vehicle, the VW campervan, albeit it went under several different names over its life. Wolfsburg Hauptbahnhof is an important stop on the Hanover to Berlin railway line with hourly ICE trains east to Berlin and west to Hanover, Dortmund, Düsseldorf and Cologne, including both Düsseldorf and Köln-Bonn airports. There are international ICE trains every couple of hours to Basel, Bern and Interlaken in Switzerland, and regional trains link Wolfsburg to Hanover, Braunschweig, Hildesheim, Stendal and Magdeburg. With a change to the S-Bahn in Hanover, you can be at Hanover Airport in around 90 minutes from Wolfsburg. Hanover Airport has links across Europe, including the hub airports at Heathrow, Amsterdam Schiphol, Paris Charles de Gaulle, Frankfurt, Munich, Copenhagen and Istanbul.